Ben Shapiro and Sam Harris on the Free Press. They had a debate on a bunch of different things, and we're not going to watch the full thing for two reasons. Number one, it's over 2 hours long. And number two, there's only one section I really wanted to hit on. Now, if you want to watch the whole thing, you can go watch it online. But there was one section here where I saw a clip of, and I was like, oh, Sam Harris actually did really good here. I wanted to see the full context, though. So I've gotten the full context now by pulling up the full video, because, you know, it's really easy to snip one little section to make yourself look good, but then you cut out like the 20 seconds afterward where the person says, actually, that's a lie, and here's why X, Y, and Z. So I wanted to check out the full context of these two people debating. Specifically in this area, they're going to be debating Donald Trump trying to overturn the election results in 2020, the rioting at the Capitol, and whether something like that disqualifies him or should disqualify him from becoming president, that he cannot accept the loss, and he likely is, if he loses, is not going to accept it again this time, as they're already setting it up to call it a steal. Let's check it out.
That world exists, and so now you're faced with a binary choice between candidates, and that binary choice cannot be avoided. I mean, the question, I guess, on a characterological, you know, on a level for Sam, I think, is you obviously believe that Donald Trump is not just a threat to the presidency, he's a threat to the republic, a grave and abiding threat to the very future of the republic, which means what means would be moral to stop him? So, you know, to offer a couple of examples, there have been a couple assassination attempts on President Trump. Let's assume that Trump wins the election. Would assassination, if we are that afraid that he is going to be Hitlerian, then be an appropriate response? Or, less provocatively, would it be an appropriate response for Kamala Harris, who would be the presiding officer in the Senate, she's the vice president of the United States, to refuse to certify the election if Donald Trump were to win? Because obviously, if he's this grave and abiding a threat, so outside the norm of our politics, so far outside the possibility of a real normal politics that it can't be fixed, would she be right to do that, for example?
Oh, let me just throw this out there quick. This is not like a defense, by the way. This is not a defense that he isn't a threat. It is just saying, like, well, if you accept that he's a threat for democracy, then couldn't you accept that it'd be okay, since we love democracy so much, to do something TOS around Trump? It is not our fault that the Republican nominee for president continues to talk about the rigged election, tried to throw out the results, and sat down and watched for 3 hours as rioters tore up the Capitol building while his goons were still making calls, trying to overturn the election results. It is not our fault that he cannot accept the loss that he took, and he did not participate in the peaceful transfer of power. It is not our fault that Donald Trump is still perpetuating this lie and making it a main theme about his campaign and talking about, you know, them stealing it again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not our fault. It's not our fault that that in a system where there's two major parties and one nominee cannot accept a loss, which kind of breaks down democracy. You know, democracy doesn't work, and one of the two major parties cannot know how to take an L, cannot know how to, you know, pass over the torch. It's not our fault. Now, if there's a radical, crazy, like implication that could be taken from that, that's scary. That's, I mean, okay, that it is what it is. Now, you could, by the way, make an argument that trying to do that to Donald Trump, take him out and or prevent him from becoming president, could end up doing more damage to the institutions that you're trying to protect. Because if you take out Trump, you make a giant martyr, and then the next guy, who might be smarter than Trump, then runs maybe a smarter campaign, using him as a martyr figure to try to revamp the movement. Where before, if he lost again and did the same old tired act of it being lost, maybe more of the public would turn against him and like turn away. Anyway, like, again, it's not our fault that the implications around Donald Trump being a threat to democracy is scary. You could still argue that taking him out would be a bigger hurt to democracy. It would hurt democracy more if you were to do that to him. And again, it's not our fault.
Sam? So that's a question for me on that final point.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, first of all, you can flip that around. If you think Trump's attempt to hold on to power in 2020, if you think all of this business about pressuring Pence not to certify the election was in any way legitimate and is any way not disqualifying for him to run for a second term, well then...
Well, legitimate is not disqualifying. Those are not quite the same thing. I think it was illegitimate and not disqualifying. But
well, it's gradations of the same problem. But I mean, anyone who supported that on any level, as his running mate J.D. Vance claims to, should support Kamala Harris doing the same thing. I know the law has changed in the interim, happily, but you should support that kind of behavior now that Kamala Harris and Biden are in power and overseeing this election. And of course, I would never support such a thing. You've asked me essentially whether I think Trump is Orange Hitler, right? And I never have, and I've never taken those concerns entirely seriously. But I would.
Even if, by the way, I think Trump 100% has authoritarian tendencies, those of maybe a Viktor Orban, of an Erdogan, of those types. And he like openly admires these types of people. When he talks about respect on the world stage, who does he cite? He doesn't cite some world peace leader or some great scientist or some leader that is well respected. He cites Viktor Orban. So I do think he tends to not only have authoritarian tendency, but he tends to respect and admire authoritarians. I don't think he's Orange Hitler because I just don't. I mean, like, I don't think he's as I don't think he's as maybe legislatively skilled as Hitler. I don't think he necessarily has the same plans that Hitler does. But I mean, you don't need to be Hitler for you to still be authoritarian and a threat to democracy. Like Augusto Pinochet wasn't Hitler. He was still obviously a threat to democracy. There's tons of coup leaders that aren't Adolf Hitler and are still very, very bad. There are still people who are authoritarian and don't kill hundreds of thousands of people, but are still, again, very bad. Those do not need to be the stakes. And like you could say, for example, that Donald Trump goes into office, he wins the election, and if your thing is, well, such a threat to democracy, take him out, you could make the argument that even in those conditions, it might be a safer bet to just try to use the systems in place to hold him back, use the Constitution, use those restrictions, and try to have legislative majorities, either have the House or the Senate, to block any authoritarian policies he tries to push through. You could make that argument. So I think there's multiple pathways out of this.
Point out that the leading scholars of fascism at this point, I mean, people like Robert Paxton, use the term in application to Trump, and it's not an empty epithet, right? It's not the same thing as saying that Trump is the next Hitler figure or the next.
Yeah, which, by the way, J.D. Vance said, Trump's VP.
Putin figure, right? I think the difference is that Trump is not ideological. Trump is in the Trump business. Trump just wants wealth and fame, essentially, and he wants power in order to secure those things. But I think there are very few people who think he wants to create the 1,000-year Reich. I mean, he wants to build condos and play golf, right? I mean, we're talking about a game show host, right, who got marketed for 12 years on television as a brilliant businessman, and half the country bought it. Right, a quarter of the country has rallied to him like he's the Messiah, and another quarter is willing just to look the other way as he desecrates the most basic norms of our democracy. And the most important one, which he's desecrated, is not committing to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, that is, from my point of view, the only thing you need to know about him to decide your vote in this election is that as a sitting president,
Amen,
he did not commit and would not commit,
True.
and still hasn't committed, frankly, to a peaceful transfer of power. And we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power, right? And so that is, I mean, just again, to default to sane conservative Republican or erstwhile Republican principles, Ronald Reagan singled this feature of our democracy out as the key feature. I mean, it is the thing that made us.
Here's the question. Should the president be able to choose of whether the president has to step down after losing an election? Throw that out there to the American public. Is that structurally efficient? Even if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 saintly presidents, how long will it take till you have a non-saintly one?
The shining city on the hill, to use his terms. I mean, the thing that people living in shithole countries, to use Trump's terms, envy in us is this peaceful transfer of power. It is a political miracle. And Trump's campaign, his continued status in the Republican Party as their frontrunner, is just a continuous desecration of that principle. And so from my point of view, everything hinges on that. And no, I don't think assassination attempts are the right remedy for that. Voting against him is the right remedy for that. And the reason why things didn't normalize over the last 4 years is not because Joe Biden was so woke, or Kamala Harris is now a woke Manchurian candidate who will govern like a blue-haired activist from Barnard. No, it's that Trump is still in our politics, and we don't have a normal conservative party. I mean, this again to come back to things that you and I agree about. You know, you and I could spend 2 hours here running down the far left and agreeing about, you know, just how bizarre the identitarian moral panic has been on the far left. But the problem with Trump and Trumpism is that it seems to justify all of that, right? It adds fuel to all of that, and the reason why the panic is justified, frankly, and again, it extends to Trump's former allies, right? It extends to his former running mate, Mike Pence. I mean, Mike Pence has said that the American people deserve to know that Donald Trump asked me to be loyal to him, to put my loyalty to him over my loyalty to the Constitution, right? That is political plutonium, right? And we should and the Republican Party should recognize it as such. But what we have in the Republican Party is, as I said, a cult of personality and a loyalty test. And you have people like J.D. Vance and even Elon Musk bending the knee in this loyalty test in the most abject way, asserting that they believe the big lie that he really won or might have won the 2020 election. And this is not, it's just not normal, and it's not compatible.
By the way, it's not just that they say the big lie, because it's one thing to say a comfortable lie to please a base or a boss. It's another thing to follow up that lie, as Vance did, with a statement that he'd be willing to make that lie state policy, as in throwing out the results of an election if someone like Donald Trump called upon him to, because he said he would not certify the results even though there was no evidence presented of wide-scale voter fraud that would justify any action like that. Taking this unprecedented, never done before step in reaction to no evidence.
With the norms of our democracy, and the sooner we wake up from this bad dream, the better.
So again, you know, you talk about the peaceful transition of power, which actually did happen because Donald Trump did leave office in January of 2021, and Joe Biden has been president mostly.
There was a delay. There was a delay in the certification of the vote because they stormed the Capitol. People died that day. It's not peaceful when people either, you know, get beaten or shot or whatever, or pipe bombs are placed outside of the DNC and RNC. It's not peaceful. Trump watched it for 3 hours and did nothing. Why did he watch it for 3 hours and did nothing? They were chanting "Hang Mike Pence," and then 12 minutes after they chanted "Hang Mike Pence" and he was informed of what was going on, he then tweeted out Mike Pence as a traitor, further egging these people on. Like, that doesn't seem peaceful to me. And Trump did everything he could to, like, interrupt that process before then.
For the last 3.5 years.
He gave them the gas. He filled their heads with the lies that motivated them to go out there and do that. Because if I thought the election was stolen, I think a lot of people, if they really thought their country was dying, would storm the Capitol.
Despite his mental ineptitude.
That was not, you cannot call January 6th a peaceful transfer of power.
Well, that's not when the transfer of power happens. I mean, people don't leave office on January 6th. People leave.
That is goofy. That is a goofy take from Ben. I refuse to believe that he believes what he just said. Well, yeah, it wasn't a peaceful transfer of power. The transfer happens over a period of time, and it starts with the certification of the vote. Actually, it starts with whoever wins the election, okay? And then it goes to the certification of the vote. But, I mean, you can't have the transfer of power without the certification of the vote, no? So it's part of the process.
If
off on
Mike
January
Pence had
20th.
obeyed him, we would have had a genuine constitutional crisis.
I agree with you.
Actually, driving does not start when you put your pedal. It does not start when you put the key in the ignition. Driving starts when you start to turn the steering wheel on the road and help. Come on, stop.
Which is, I think, that why Mike Pence did the right thing. And I think that what Donald Trump, the argument that Donald Trump was making between November and January was morally and legally specious. But with that said, there was a peaceful transition of power.
But right now on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump is asked, and he was on Joe Rogan.
Somebody just said, Dylan, why am I shadow banned on YouTube? Tell me your username. Email it to me at DylanBurnsTV@gmail.com if you really are. I'll see if we banned you or that stuff, but I don't think we banned you. I don't think we did. Or if we did, it was because it was funny. One or the other.
Of power.
But right now on the campaign trail, when Donald Trump is asked, and he was on Joe Rogan a few days ago, about the 2020 election, he still claims that he won the election. What do you make of that?
I mean, I obviously disagree with him. I don't think that he won the 2020 election. Also, this is part and parcel. I wish it weren't. But it is part and parcel of a reactionary divide that has plagued our politics since before Donald Trump, frankly. I mean, when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, we then spent 3.5 years of people claiming that Donald Trump was a Russian plant and had been bootstrapped into office by the Russians manipulating Facebook. This sort of election denialism is not. It is ugly. It is bad on both sides. It is. I won't even say that what Democrats
on both sides.
That's not true. I mean, it's not. If Donald Trump wins this election, I promise you will see election denialism on the left. That is incredibly similar to what you've seen from Donald Trump.
I'm sorry. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Come on. Hillary, for a second, considered getting lawyers to look at Michigan and then immediately dropped it after 24 hours. And then that was that. And then she called Trump to congratulate him. Where was the Trump call to Hillary to Biden to congratulate him? You think Trump's going to call Harris and congratulate Harris? Where was Trump during Biden's inauguration? I can tell you where Obama was during Trump's inauguration. Obama welcomed Trump into the White House, and even though the whole country was saying, not the whole country, but there was a portion of the country saying not our president, Obama did that anyway, because that's what you do. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to root for the country, not your party, in circumstances like that. That's at least the idea. You hope the president does well because we're all in the same ship, and the ship sinks, we all go down with it. That idea. It's just not the same. Donald Trump called for the suspension of the Constitution. No, the termination of the Constitution in order to reinstall himself as president. There's no equivalent. There is no equivalent, no matter what Twitter account you can bring up or complaining that Hillary did post-election about Russian interference and such.
I wanted to ask you that, and this is a question for you. I'm not going to filibuster, Ben. I just want to ask you. If on Election Day we have a clear result, right? So there's a landslide in the swing states, and someone really wins, right? If I told you that the losing candidate denied the results of the election and simply would not accept a loss, and even appealed to their most fanatical supporters to come into the streets and just obviously provoked violence on the part of the mob, right? And said, and when asked, what about the Constitution? This candidate said, to hell with the Constitution. We don't have a country anymore. Which candidate am I conceivably talking about?
Well, I mean, I think that, given Trump's rhetoric in 2020, obviously what you're talking about is Donald Trump. I don't think that's how it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris. I think that the way that it'd be phrased by Kamala Harris is more subtly.
There's a chance that Kamala Harris, if she loses in a landslide, you think there's a chance that she will not accept the results of the election?
Forget about a landslide. How about a close election?
How
about a close election? How about a close election? Forget about a landslide, because a landslide
the landslide just makes it perfectly clear. I'm telling you that.
Why the necessity for that sort of clarity in an election that's 50-50? Why not actually pick a plausible scenario? The most plausible scenario is that she loses in a very tight election.
It's all too
and then
plausible.
She says there's been voter suppression, and then she suggests.
It's all too plausible. Ben, it's all too plausible because currently the chance that there will be a landslide in the swing states is about 40%, even though we're at 50-50 between the two candidates. According to Nate Silver, there's a 40% chance that that one of them runs the table in the swing states, right? So it's
For
not,
sure. That'd be an electoral college landslide. We're not talking about a popular vote landslide in any case.
no, right.
Wait, but since when did Ben care about the popular vote when determining the president of the United States? He's a staunch defender of the electoral college.
So I'm talking about a clear result, right? Where no allegations of fraud are plausible.
Okay, so the most obvious sort of rhetoric that would be used along those lines would be Trump's. And then the rhetoric that would be used on the other side if Trump wins would be that Trump has corrupted the system. The system has been so corrupted that people weren't able to vote properly in places like Georgia, which has been the claim that there was Jim Crow 2.0 in Georgia for years. There would be claims that Donald Trump was paid off by the billionaires, that there was foreign interference in the election. There would be all of these claims, and they would float around. Donald Trump has all. This is my original.
By the way, there is foreign interference in the election. I don't know. Like, that's not really a claim. That's like that there's a thing that's happening. That doesn't necessarily change the outcome. Like, it's not like, oh, this foreign country spread disinformation to affect the public. Now we have to change their election results. I mean, if that was the case, then we need to undo Brexit due to the lies that were told then. But whatever. Point is, okay, sorry, I need to get to sleep. Let's finish this.
Claim, Sam, is that Donald Trump is very obvious in his excesses. Democrats and the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris are much more, I would say, much more subtle in their excesses. But those excesses are no.
What you mean by not filing lawsuits to try to overturn the election results in any state? Is that the subtle way of doing it? The subtle way of doing it is Hillary on the TV, like, pfft. I mean, the Russians got him elected, a legitimate president. That's the difference. Yeah, you might say that's not couth. You might even say that's bad. That's not the same as terminate the Constitution and make me president now. And watching as the crowd says, hang Mike Pence, you start tweeting stuff out to egg him on. Why would you hear from your staff, as we now know is the case, that they were chanting hang Mike Pence, and then you go out, and he was told that because his staff was like, oh, we'll tell him and it'll calm him down. Then 10 minutes later, it's like, Pence is a traitor. What would you call that outside of egging on the violent crowd? He was watching them on TV. He knew what they were doing.
Less dangerous for being more subtle. In fact, in some ways, I think they are more dangerous for being more subtle.
Ben, you can't use a phrase like no less dangerous. Hillary Clinton conceded in 24 hours. That is less dangerous than this continuous provocation.
Sam, I just disagree with you. I think that the attempt by members of the media, by Hillary Clinton, who herself said that Donald Trump was illegitimately elected based on Russian interference in the 2016 election, was highly damaging.
Who cares in relative to what? Relative to calls for the suspension of the Constitution and attempts to overturn the election results? Relative to what?
How long did she say that for? How long did she say that for? Does she still say that?
I mean, she will. Yes, actually, she will still claim openly that there was manipulation that took place during the. That is true.
Well, wait. There was manipulation that took place during the 2016 election. That doesn't mean that he's an illegitimate president, but that did happen.
That there was manipulation during the 2016 election.
She says
that's a fact, Ben. Why do you say that like that's a dunk? You just if Harris won, would there not be discussion about Iranian involvement on her behalf, since there's been some investigation into the Iranians not wanting Trump to be president again because of how staunch of an opponent he is to the Iranians? Even though Harris is now on the campaign trail saying Iran is the biggest enemy of the United States. I think it might be specifically designed to counter this, by the way, because under no world is the Iranians the biggest threat to the United States. It's just the foreign policy issue of the day.
The sane thing to say is that there is continuous foreign interference in our elections, right?
But that's always been the case.
That's the double standard, Sam. Now you're proposing a double standard.
When
Hillary says it, it's totally subtle and fine. And when Trump says it in the most obvious, foolish way, then it's totally different.
Wait, but Trump didn't say there was foreign interference. Ugh, I don't like the foreign interference. Trump said terminate the Constitution, make me president. And even when he won elections, like he did in 2016, he still denied the election results. How much of a loser and an insecure egomaniac do you need to be to win an election and then still go out and lie about how much you won that election by, because you couldn't just take the electoral college victory, you had to also claim the popular vote victory. I mean, back in 2015, whatever. You get the point. You go back to the Republican primary, you can start to see hints of this behavior too.
Go ahead.
You're just missing the relevant details here. Almost everyone thinks that there is continuous foreign interference in our elections. Very few people at this point think that it has been decisive and that it was decisive in 2016. I mean, the problem in 2016, it was a much bigger problem, that the internal division was real, and that whatever Russia tried to do on Facebook was amplifying very real divisions that exist in our society, which we should worry about. But I'm not in contact with.
They would organize BLM and then counter BLM protests at the same location to have them scuffle.
With any Democrats, and I talked to a lot of them at this point, who have burned any fuel over even weeks, much less months or years, worrying that Trump's first term was totally illegitimate because the election was hacked, and I mean, what really happened? I mean, there were things that seemed decisive.
What are all these facial expressions from Ben? He's having a grand old time over there.
That one
He should be a performance actor.
Could regret, like Comey opening the email investigation 10 days before the election, and that functioning as effectively as a kind of October surprise, right? I mean, nothing came of it, but it seemed decisive in terms of her poll results in those last weeks. But I mean, her loss was overdetermined, and
Senados_D has donated $25. Listening to Ben Shapiro for extended amounts of time. Yikes. For your next bottle of rum.
Went out there, got brain damage from the explosions, came back here, got brain damage from the computer. No wonder I'm starting to get a ringing in the ears.
Most sane Democrats recognize that. What you do not have in the Democratic Party is a cult of personality around anyone and a series of loyalty tests. I mean, again, we're so far from the actual ground truth here. I mean, the ground truth is that we know at this point that there were Republicans in Congress, right, who would have voted to impeach Trump after January 6th, but they didn't because they were afraid for their lives. They were afraid that someone in the MAGA cult would come and kill them or members of their families, right? We know this from Mitt Romney, and we know it from Liz Cheney, too. This is not normal, and it's not happening on the Democratic side, right? This is a descent into, if you don't like the term fascism, something very much like fascism. I mean, I would say that this is fascism punching a gaping hole in our democracy, and it is the effect of Trump's demagoguery.
So,
his
Sam,
style of politics.
You're saying fascism is punching a gaping hole in our democracy, and this is solely due to Trump, and yet you also say that you would not support Kamala Harris if she, for example...
Well, I don't know if it's solely due to Trump. I mean, like, there's conditions that had to be laid for Trump to be able to come here and take advantage of the political scene in order to be the nominee and then win the presidency. There had to be underlying economic woes and anxieties, racial anxieties. There had to be a gaping hole in the Republican Party that he wanted. I mean, you had to have a weak leading candidate for the Republicans, Jeb Bush. I think there's a bunch of different factors that had to be there, but there's a. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's not just Donald, but
stop the certification of the election. And so my question remains: if Trump is such a grave threat to democracy, then why aren't you treating it that way? Voting isn't enough. I don't treat Kamala Harris as that sort of threat to democracy.
Well,
I think that Kamala Harris.
What is this return to? Why won't you shoot him? Does he just want to get Sam banned or something? What is? This is a silly question. It's a silly question.
Threat to many of the institutions.
I'm not going to burn down the village. I'm not going to burn down the democracy in order to save it, right? So I'm not in favor of political.
But your argument is that it's ending under Trump. But your argument is that it's ending under Trump.
I can well imagine that our institutions are strong enough to weather a second Trump term, right? I don't think we're going to be. It's not going to be the Third Reich. And again, I don't think.
Here's the problem, though. Even if you believe that, and I think that a second Trump term, maybe it's like 60-40, okay? 60-40. 60% we get through it and we don't see a collapse of the republic. 40%, like whatever number it is, if it's the majority on the side of republic survives, if I told you like roll this D20, okay? If the number's below 5, you die. You're not gonna roll the dice. You're not gonna roll the dice. I don't want to play that type of game with our democracy. And we know that since Mike Pence has been replaced with J.D. Vance because Mike Pence would not usurp American democracy for Donald Trump and his loyalty to Donald Trump, that now with J.D. Vance, that's one more check and balance that is no longer in place.
He has those kinds of aspirations because he's such a small figure in the end, right? He's not a man of ideas on any level, right? So as far as I can tell, he believes almost nothing. But the crucial problem for me is that, he doesn't seem to recognize that we have an interest in the maintenance of world order, right? I mean, he's a completely transactional figure. He cares about his relationships.
Is this a turning to foreign policy?
Right? I mean, and I think he probably cares about his relationships to foreign leaders to a degree that could border on treason in certain circumstances. But I mean, it's just insane that we had a president in him who said he trusts Putin more than our own intelligence agencies, right? And then he shared top secret information with Kremlin officials in the White House because he just couldn't keep his mouth shut. I mean, he was literally just
after people forget this. There's audio of I gotta play this because this is the stuff that's never brought up, but I thought was always the wildest. People talk about like a few of these, but yeah, here it is. Here's the moment that I've been looking for.
Breaking news. We have obtained what is expected to be a central piece of the government's case against Donald Trump. The actual audio recording of the former president talking as if he's showing a highly classified document on U.S. war plans against Iran with people not cleared to even know it exists, let alone what's in it. In a moment, only on CNN, you will hear what jurors will hear one day. The recording was made 2 summers ago, July 2021, at the former president's club in Bedminster, New Jersey.
Mind you, these documents were not declassified. He did not use declassification powers on them. Don't know why you would use declassification powers on invasion plans if you still want to use them. You usually keep them secret in case you need to invade.
You will clearly hear the former president as he is speaking to several people. According to the special counsel's indictment, they include a writer working on Mark Meadows' memoir, the publisher, and 2 of Trump's staff members. The president was aware he was being recorded. This is the first time it is being played publicly.
These are bad, sick people.
That was your coup, against you.
Well, it started right at the
like
beginning.
when Milley's talking about, you were going to try to do a coup. No, they were trying to do that before you even were sworn in.
That's right.
Trying to overthrow your election.
Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look. This was him. They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this.
By the way, like, while some journalists will keep stuff off the record as a formality if they're like your friend and stuff, just declaring something off the record does not make it off the record. Especially if you just quickly say it and then keep going without saying anything else. They're just gonna keep not. It's not like a magic. It's like people treat it like it's that thing where, well, if you ask a cop if he's a cop, he has to tell you.
They presented me this. This is off the record, but they presented me this. This was him. This was the Defense Department and him. Wow. We looked at some. This was him. This wasn't done by me. This was him. All sorts of stuff. It's pages long. Look. Wait a minute. Let's see here.
Pages and pages, huh?
Yeah.
I just found, isn't that amazing? This totally wins my case,
Mm-hmm.
Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. You attack, and
Hillary would print that out all the time,
she'd send it, she'd send it to Anthony Weiner, the pervert.
Please print.
By the way, isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I was just saying,
God, it's so mind-numbing to listen to him talk to all these brown nosers. Oh my gosh, the sycophants just cackling.
We were talking about
just chewing on every word.
And he said he wanted to attack Iran and what? These are the
You
papers.
did.
This was done by the military, given to me. I think we can probably, right?
What does that even mean? This was given from the military to me. That could have meant that he requested an invasion plan, and then they drew one up about, like, because that's their job. If the president asks them to do something like that, they have to do it. Then they go out and do an invasion plan, bring it back to him, and like, here you go, here's the invasion plan. Wow. See, they were the one. I have no there's no frame of reference.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to try to
Declassify.
figure out a yeah.
See, as president, I could have declassified
Yeah.
it. Now I can't, but this is classified.
Now we have a problem.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, it's so. Here and I have, and you probably almost didn't believe me, but
That's enough of that. But you get the idea. Let's wrap up this Sam Harris Ben Shapiro debate.
Gossiping about intelligence secrets related to ISIS. And the Israeli intelligence went crazy over this, right? I mean, he's not a serious figure.
Well, can I respond to that one?
Yes, and then I'll jump in.
Because this one's actually kind of fascinating. So now we've shifted sort of topics into foreign policy and maintenance of world order and vision of the world.
Okay, never mind. They're shifting into foreign policy. I wanted to just talk about this, and plus I gotta go to bed. Okay. Ben didn't have a defense for this section. Ben's defense was, well, if this is true, what type of crazy conclusions can we make? Those are your crazy conclusions, okay? We're just establishing a base foundation, one that I think Sam Harris laid it out quite well. What you're saying is, well, if we build this house or that house or this house on top of it, no. You don't need to get that far. If the foundation is there, talking about how the conclusions that come after that is scary does not change the fact that the foundation is there. You could build a different type of house on the foundation. You could say we need to do everything to stop him from getting elected, but if he does, trying to take him out and or trying to stop him from becoming president unconstitutionally could do more damage to the very systems you're trying to protect, and therefore it is not the pathway if you care about the country. Other houses could be built on top of that. So he is not defending the point. He is avoiding the point for another conversation entirely to see if he can get Sam Harris to say something TOS. Sam Harris doesn't take debate. He doubles down. He pounces. And I think he did pretty well here. I'm not a huge Sam Harris fan. Not really. But I think this is probably one of his better performances as of recent. I can't remember a different performance, at least on this section, for what I saw. I can't remember a different performance by him that was this thorough and left his opponent reeling this much as he was grasping for stuff unrelated to the topic at hand. Okay. Now that we're done with that, I think it is time for me to say arrivederci, because I am going to be embedding with the army tomorrow, and I am very, very tired. Very, very, very tired.